Just share. Just let me share. Welcome for everyone to this teaser or primer, as we call it here at IFSG. Okay, I hope all of you can see the screen. This session is essentially a very short session that I will give an introduction to. If you're interested to sign up to the courses or this particular course that we are offering through IFSG, then you get an idea of what will be covered and whether it's aligned to your interests in understanding Islamic finance. So this core foundation to Islamic finance was designed by myself based on the foundations that I received through my PhD program, and also through my work within Islamic finance and interactions with industry experts and stuff like that. So Singapore, although it's a global hub in finance, it's still quite new to Islamic finance. We do not have a formal course in any of our universities yet, or even in our other tertiary institutions. The understanding of Islamic finance is still quite limited within the Singaporean context. So I decided that maybe through IFSG, we could offer something that would give a good foundation to the understanding of Islamic finance, at least its core principles and its objectives. Once we have that laid down and we are aligned with the global Islamic finance community, then we can stack on top of it like issues or challenges or questions that we have dealing with our day-to-day, issues and challenges that we have with our financial transactions to make it more Islamic. So let me spend, I think this session will be maybe about 45 minutes to an hour long, depending on the questions that you have at your end. I prefer a very engaging type of session rather than me just presenting what I will teach in the full course. So I will spend maybe about 20 to 25 minutes to go through the course overview, to describe what I will cover within the course. And then I will open the floor to questions to anyone. You can just unmute yourself, ask any questions that you have, on what I'm going to cover, or any other questions that you want me to cover that's not listed in the overview or not clear in the overview, and then we can take it forward. Okay, so right now, basically the course is divided into 6 main parts. The first part or module, whatever you want to call it, would be to give an introduction to what Islamic finance is. And usually I start at a very high-level view of why Islamic finance is necessary. And then we'll make a case for Islamic banking and the financial system. We'll talk about the issues that we are seeing, all the different crises that we are seeing through the conventional banking and financial system, and then how the Islamic system can actually provide a strong alternative that not only Muslims but everyone else can look at and use, right? So in a recession, typically this conversation comes up, and right now we're heading towards another recession. So the interest is Islamic finance is coming up. It's always a cyclical occurrence in my observation, that when something bad happens to the economy, people tend to look for alternatives, and Islamic finance is usually the strong alternative that everyone looks at. So we'll learn about the different principles of Islamic finance throughout the entire course, and I'll touch on the different benefits and the different tools that we have within the Islamic system that can actually solve a lot of the problems that we see in the current existing conventional system. But first, we have to lay down the foundation. So then we will talk about the principles of Islamic banking and the Shariah. So the Shariah are a divine set of rules that will basically underpin every Islamic concept whether it's Islamic finance, Islamic governance, Islamic economics, Islamic anything, right? Everything is underpinned by the Sharia. So Islamic finance is no difference. And then we'll talk about the principle of permissibility, and then we'll move on to, a broader view of what makes up the economy, which is typically economic institutions, rules, and contracts. So then the next part will be to talk specifically about Islamic financial contracts, because essentially the longest verse in the Al-Quran is where Allah teaches us how to write down agreements, right? So contracts are nothing but agreements, so that there won't be any misunderstanding, there won't be disputes about not understanding certain terms and conditions and stuff like that. So we write things down. We will write things down so that it will form a formal contract. And then we'll go through the different types of contracts within the Islamic sphere. Various types of contracts. We'll go through the contracts which are permissible but maybe not encouraged, because these were contracts that existed before Islam came. And then what are the contracts which in the eyes of the Sharia that it is much better to use, right? The risk sharing type of contracts. So we'll go through all of them. Then we'll pick up on certain contracts which are typically used in commercial transactions today, used not only by banks, but if you're running any business, these are the banks that typically are repeatedly used often. And then we'll touch on a little bit about the rules that govern specific contracts, when they are used, how they are structured, what are the liabilities and what are the responsibilities of the two counterparties that are working on the contract or agreeing on the contract, and so on. So we won't go so much deep in depth because within the limited time frame of the course duration, we will cover what's necessary. And if in future there's interest to go very deep into certain contracts, or how to write a specific contract, or to formulate a certain contract, then we may have to design another course where we go into those specifics. But for now, it's just to give a core foundation and overview of what Islamic finance is. But we'll give you a full view so that even if you're interested in specific areas of Islamic finance, I think this course is designed to give you a full view, because you don't know what you do not know. So once you have a full view of what Islamic finance intend to do, and we have covered that, then it'll be easy to move forward into your specific areas of interest, because it could open up more opportunities for you and unlock other areas of interest that you may not know that you actually want to go into. So the third part will be on specific Islamic banking operations and instruments. Broadly, we'll cover the instruments that we use in Islamic retail banking and personal banking. Things like your personal financing, mortgages, auto loans, and stuff like that. And then we'll also touch on Islamic commercial and trade finance instruments, where it's more of like a corporate type of banking. Then on the fourth part, I'll cover a hugely important area for financial markets or any financial system, which is the capital market. So typically the capital market is divided into these three main categories: the debt market and the equities market, and then one small portion which is the interbank money market. These are instruments that banks use to manage their surplus units or deficit units, and to also reconcile their balance sheet at the end of every day. So there are instruments that's out there that's designed Islamically, especially in a developed market like Malaysia, which is the dual banking system. In Singapore, we run a single banking system, which is the conventional system. But in countries like Malaysia and other Islamic majority countries, they run a dual banking system where they accommodate conventional system as well as the Islamic system. And then you have under debt, you have derivative markets, which can be quite controversial, and we'll touch and answer questions on that during the class. The fifth part is on the risk management tools that we have for Islamic finance. In finance, risk management is very important because a large part of what finance people do, or professionals in finance do, is to manage risk. So when they loan out capital, or they invest in certain products or certain corporations or stuff like that, they do a lot of due diligence, and they do a lot of background checks and things like that. Is because they want to manage their risk. Right? They want to ensure that the capital that they lend out or they invest in actually comes back, right? And maybe make a profit out of it. So risk management is a huge area within finance, and we'll learn about what are the types of additional risk exposures that we have when we run an Islamic system, which is a Sharia compliance risk, and other risks that you'll find out within the course. And then what are the tools that we have to manage them, right? So if there are tools within the conventional system which are interest-based or not halal in the eyes of the Sharia, what are the alternative tools that we have developed within Islamic finance to actually overcome such problems? Okay, and then we will go through the standard regulatory and authorities which also set standards for the Islamic financial system, which are based all around the world. Some of them are based in the GCC, some of them are based here in Southeast Asia. We'll go through who they are, what are their roles and responsibilities, and where they overlap and where they also do not overlap. There's a lot of harmonization and a lot of coordination between institutions in the global Islamic finance industry these days. In the early days, there was a lot of doubt and questions by people outside from the conventional world looking in to assess how credible the Islamic system is by understanding how we harmonize the different mazhabs and the different opinions by different scholars on their standing, based on the Sharia on certain permissibility on contracts or instruments or stuff like that. So now the Islamic financial system is getting better as the days go, years go by, and there's a lot of collaboration and coordination within the global system. Then lastly, we'll cover the governance and the organization of Islamic financial institutions. We'll go through an overview of what an operational framework for Islamic finance should look like. If you follow this framework, you would manage the system quite credibly and sustainably, and it would actually outperform the conventional system, because everything we know from the Sharia perspective seems to point that a true Islamic finance system, which is well run, follows the Sharia understanding closely, would actually outperform the current system that we have. It will not only outperform, it will be more stable, it will be a safe haven for many investors, it will grow the GDP for many countries, it will do a lot of things that Islam was meant to do as a mercy to mankind. Then lastly, we'll talk about corporate governance and Sharia governance, because as good as any system is, including any Islamic system, right? Whether you're governing using an Islamic governance system, or you're running an Islamic bank, or you're running an Islamic Fintech or Islamic company, or even an Islamic household, it depends on the people who run the show, right? It depends on the human beings. That's why the focus of Rasulullah ﷺ was always the individual, about you, increasing your iman, your taqwa, and everything else. So we start from a very broad macro view, and then we will work our way down, moving weaving through the macro issues as well as the micro issues, and then focusing on the individual and how Islam ties in, and how Iman plays, and Akidah and everything else that will actually help in the muamalat of our lifetime. So what time is it? This is, yeah, it's been 18 minutes or 17 minutes. That's the overview for this course that I've designed and is offered through IFSZ. If you have any questions, you can just unmute and ask your questions. If you're too shy, you can type it into the chat box. I'll look at the chat box also.
Yeah, I think there are some pre-webinar questions.
Okay.
So one of it is if there is any Islamic fintech companies in Singapore that you are aware of, Dr. Hazik?
Islamic fintech companies in Singapore?
Yeah, and maybe from that tangent, right? Will you be touching on any Islamic fintech topics inside?
I have a Islamic fintech professional course that is offered by my friend's company based out of Malaysia. This course is course that spans over several weeks and is endorsed by MDEC and AOFI and one top tier university in Malaysia. So that one speaks deeply into Islamic fintech in terms of how AI, blockchain, and IoT is used specifically. For the non-Islamic version of fintech is offered through Sapiens here in Singapore. Brother Ivan actually went through that. It's IBF sponsored. So if you're under 40, it's 90% subsidized. If you're over 40, it's 80% subsidized. But if you have your SkillsFuture credit, which I think we just got a top up of $1,000, essentially the balance $100 or $200, you can pay it through your SkillsFuture credit and it's free. So that one you have to approach, myself or Sapiens, if you don't know who they are. That's the conventional fintech. The Islamic one is offered in Malaysia. But in this particular course, it was not designed to touch on fintech. It's meant to go before that, which is Islamic finance. So the reason why this is especially done for the Singapore market is because, as I mentioned at the start, Singapore doesn't have a formal Islamic finance education. Even we are working with the madrasas to offer it into their curriculum because they knew it's important, but they do not have a fully qualified person with a PhD in Islamic finance, formally trained, and I'm someone who has a master's in conventional finance. So I know both systems very well. And then it's easy for me to design something which is appropriate for, for Islamic finance as a fundamental in an emerging market like Singapore, but also for the Singaporean context. So to answer your question, I can answer questions on fintech if you attend the class and you had a specific question. But in terms of the material coverage, there is none on fintech.
Yeah, understand. I think the next question is on takaful and insurance. So will you be diverging the difference between these two inside the course?
Yes. So we have about 200 plus slides to cover over 2 days, which we just ran with a group of financial advisors. I think there were about 30 something people.
32, yeah.
And we had a table in there that put conventional insurance and takaful, actually 3, conventional insurance, mutual insurance, and takaful side by side, and we cover line by line. So we go down to that level because the quick way to understand things is, I think most people are familiar with conventional finance because they use it every day, right? They read it in the papers, if you've been to school, economics and finance, you learn all of that. But from an Islamic perspective, what's the difference? So the beauty about this course is it's designed by someone who knows both systems very, very well. and then I can weave in and out to quickly clarify how different the Islamic finance objectives are. You know, the instruments may look a little bit the same, but fundamentally, in substance, it's meant to achieve the objectives of the Shariah, or we call it the Maqasid Shariah, a little bit differently.
Yep.
And it's important to know that because not only do you understand why Islam came to mankind, you will also understand the beauty of the religion, because it will actually give you real tools that you can work with, rather than, you know, the kind of religious understanding that we have is because we are in a secular state, and our religious education is not part of the secular education, and it's something that you pursue on your own, because we are multi-racial, multi-religious society, and Singapore has adopted this path, right? Nothing wrong with that. It's just that how do we as Muslims reconcile our religious obligations with our day-to-day responsibilities. So in this course, you will come to the realization that you don't have to live this duality, that your Islam part will actually fortify your day-to-day. So through a course like this, you will understand that actually Islam is meant to help all sorts of system, whether you're a secular system or conventional system or any system. We have deep-rooted values that are meant to help mankind, like a human being in the broader sense. It's just that as Muslims, we learn it from a specific, halal, haram, sunnah, macro, those kind of things. So as most Muslims, which I think in the first run, they begin to, the first run of the course, they were very relieved to learn that now they have additional tools which are already familiar to them, that can now help them in their financial understanding and their day-to-day actions, and manifest those in their behaviors, and not only become a better employee or better person, but also a better Muslim, while just adhering to the Sharia.
Yeah, I think Dr. Hazik, there are no other questions, but before we jump to we let the rest ask the questions. Maybe what are the questions by the first run that intrigued you or made you pause for thought?
They had specific questions because before we ran this course, which is a formal type of course, right? With a proper structure, with covering all bases within the financial system. Before, I think they went to classes where it was specific questions like, is CPF halal, what about the Singapore savings bond, and those kind of things. So because they already heard those opinions by previous people that they ran courses like that before, they also wanted to know my opinion on certain things. So they had very specific questions, which I can't remember because there was a lot of questions over those 2 days. And I like that because it's a very engaging type of class. I prefer answering your questions directly rather than going through my slides, because as much as there is a structure that we have to cover to give you a broad understanding of what a financial system is, just like economics or finance in your degree class or your poly, your tertiary classes, because this is what you need to know to understand the system, right? As much as we need to do that, I would prefer to answer specific questions which you want answered. Once I can do that, then it's easier to go through the material, because you would, I would have already addressed those concerns, and the walls would come down, and then you will be more receptive about the materials that we will go through, and then you will understand that some tools or instruments can be a little bit controversial, and I will tell you why it's controversial. Some instruments are very strong and not used enough within by the Islamic banks that are already existing in Malaysia and elsewhere, and what we need to do to to change that. So this system is still a work in progress. It's not for someone to come in and say that, okay, this is the way things should be, or the way things should run. Of course, we learn from the experts, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel, no need to relearn from past mistakes, right? You listen to the experts because they've seen it, and so that you can move forward faster. But it still doesn't mean that everything is carved in stone, right? It's a work in progress. New things come up, like cryptocurrency, tokenization of the economy, what's the direction and all that. So those kind of questions can be weaved into the course if you have specific questions, and I can answer them, because I'm also a fintech expert, because I started my career as an engineer. I spent a decade being an engineer, and so technology comes very easy to me. And then I have a master's in finance and PhD in Islamic finance. So fintech comes naturally, and Islamic fintechs come even more naturally to me. So
I think now we open the floor to the questions. Anyone, you can unmute yourself. Okay.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Dr. Hazik and Brother Ridwan.
Yes.
Just now, Dr. Hazik, you mentioned that this Islamic financial institution will always beat like the current system. And that, whenever like something bad happens to the economy, this cyclical thing, Islamic finance punya macam awareness starts to rise lah. People are more interested. Is there like a truly Islamic punya financial institution in the world, whether like within our region atau maybe in negeri Arab ke?
Yeah, so creating the perfect or the true Islamic financial institution is like having taqwa. So taqwa is something, I'm not sure if anyone in the world will say that I have reached taqwa and I'm a mutaqin. We every Friday we go to Friday prayers, we pray for taqwa, and we pray that we become among the mutaqin, right? But who are these mutaqin? I don't know whether you can single anyone out. It's like an ideal or a goal that we are trying to strive towards. So likewise, I'm not sure if I can point out any perfect or true Islamic financial institutions, but I'm sure all of us, whether it's institution or individually, we are striving to be the ideal Muslim, or to come up with the best system, according to the Sharia.
Okay, it's like a work in progress lah.
For sure, yes.
Do you think that a truly Islamic financial institution is possible with our current fiat currency?
The problem is not fiat currency. I think what is impeding us from achieving our ideals are actually ourselves, right? Our nafs, our non-compliance to Shariah. We know we're supposed to pray 5 times a day, but I'm pretty sure most of us don't do that. We know we're supposed to fast, we're supposed to charity, we're supposed to speak with kindness, we're supposed to respect our elders, we're supposed to be merciful to the young and to the less fortunate and all that. But yeah, so I think we are the biggest impediment. There's a large following of people who want to bring back the gold dinar. But if there was a paper that I wrote, and it was based on much data, based on a book which had 800 years worth of data. It's called This Time Is Different by Kenneth Rogoff and Carmen Reinhardt, Harvard professors. This book came out in 2012. So one of the charts that they had, I actually photostated the chart, and I started to do comparison between the gold standard, and then the Bretton Woods standard, and then the fiat floating rate currency standard that we have. So the floating rate we have is after August 1971, when President Nixon closed the gold window for the US Reserve. For some of you who's old enough, you understand that after World War II until August of 1971, the US currency was pegged to gold, right? And US was the preferred reserve currency of the world until today. So then after something happened in August of 1971, Nixon shut down the gold window, and then we gave rise to the floating rate system. So I wanted to put this argument about gold dinar being better and the fiat currency, is being worthless because we just print paper money, blah blah blah. Which I find that argument is a little bit flawed. So then I divided into when it was gold, when the coins were actually gold and silver and copper and whatsoever, and then the Bretton Woods between 1945 to 1971, and then 71 until current. So what I found out by plotting that was this was against crisis, and we're talking about sovereign crisis, crisis of countries, up and down, right? So with wars in place and everything else, right, up and down. So throughout all three systems, there were crises happening across the entire system. So if you can Google gold dinar and something and then my name, it should be on some site which I've put my paper on, and you can look at the data on and that chart which I'm referring to. But in that paper, what I did not highlight was when you look at the Bretton Woods system, there was boom and bust cycle, right? The crisis going on, but towards the end, it was actually one of the lowest point in history, right? So I did not put that analysis in that paper, but I'm giving you the analysis now since you're here at the primer. The analysis to that was that during that time, because when you are pegged to gold and there was risk. When you peg to something, a commodity or gold, what you do is you limit the ability to create credit, unlimited credit, right? So the point is not being pegged about gold, right? The point is limiting credit creation, right? So my analysis limiting credit creation and the flow of capital between countries were also a little bit diminished, right? So when you have those few conditions in place, it will make the system, right, whether it's an Islamic system or even the conventional, a very fragmented and volatile system like the conventional system, are more stable. So these are the key points which we need to be aware of before we jump to the conclusion that a gold system or gold dinar system would be far superior than a fiat currency.
It's not perfect.
It's not perfect, but we need to know the reason why.
Okay.
Right. Credit creation is the key. So, for instance, if we are forced to, still continue with this conventional system, we can still make it stable by making it a full reserve system. Instead of now where you have a fractionalized system where you put 12.5% or 8% based on Basel II requirement with the central bank, and then the bank can loan out 12 times of the money that they have. So for instance, they have $1 million within the bank. If they put it with the central bank, with the current fractionalized capital adequacy ratio that we have in our conventional system, the bank is allowed to multiply 8 times or 12 times and create that kind of credit so that they can loan out to their customers and make money from the interest.
I see.
So such system is very fragile because you have small amount of money, you leverage so much, 8 times to 12 times, and then you are operating on that much credit.
Okay, and like would a Sharia compliant system allow this?
The current Islamic banking system are also fractionalized, so
okay.
it's far from perfect. So we have been purists like us have been pushing for a full reserve. If you have only 1 million, you should only work on 1 million loans, and whatever commercial financing or whatever you as an Islamic bank should do.
Okay,
So
essentially just spend what you have.
exactly, you can only loan out and spend what you have, and it's a very simple type of logic which Islam teaches us.
Okay. It sounds very radical when you compare to like the current system.
Yeah, the banks will look at us and think we're crazy, because they say, without credit, how am I going to make
How
more
to
money?
survive.
Yeah, my shareholders will fire me. The bank CEOs will say, you suggest this to me, at the next board meeting I'm fired, because the shareholders will fire me. But you succumb to pressure, or you listen to the Sharia. To me, it's as easy as that, right? Because there is wisdom in following the Sharia, even if you don't understand economics, or you don't have a PhD or whatever, right? We are believers, or we adhere to the Sharia because we know that there are things that we do not know, or we will only find out later.
Beyond our comprehension.
Yeah.
Divine
But
wisdom.
if you don't have the capacity or time to find out everything, which most people do not, if you just stick to the Sharia, inshallah, you are safe.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Hazik.
No problem. Like, for instance, I read, Al-Ghazali said something, right? If the Halley's Comet, there's a Halley's Comet that circles the universe every 800 years or 1,000 years or something like that, right? So each human being lives, average lifetime is 83.33 years, right? So if the comet passes the world when you are not living, right? You don't observe the comet, right? Then you say that there's no such thing. This is BS, right? So, but if the Sharia tells you something, because it's meant for mankind, right? From time of Rasulullah all the way until the end of time, right? So we don't live that long. So if there are prescriptions, and then the scholars help us extract wisdom from the Quran and Sunnah, which is now classified under fiqh or jurisprudence, right? If that is done for you, and you agree, and there's no a dispute on such wisdom, following it would keep you safe for sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Hazik. I think we have some time for other questions from the floor. You can just unmute yourself, or just send your questions on the chat function. Oh, okay. Saif is asking, Assalamualaikum, Doctor. I have a question. If I'm a representative promoting certain products to clients, and a Muslim client is interested to purchase an investment product, investing in mutual funds, which contains non-Sharia compliant sub-funds, and advice is already given to him or her to make them aware of the presence of non-Sharia compliant sub-funds, will I be responsible for their haram investment gains if they choose to purchase such products even after advice has been given to him or her?
Okay, we had this question in the last class. So what we told them was that if it is quantifiable, what part is haram, or had some interest component, or because it's very difficult to find a 100% pure halal investment. So even for Bank Negara, in the screening of Sharia compliant stocks, you'll find that if they had, if they said 100% no riba, then there will be no stocks that will be Sharia compliance. So they have this screening procedure, which is like 33% of financial activities. If you touch on interest, the limit is 33%. If you fall below that, you are still considered Sharia compliant and all that. So what we can do in such cases is that if you are the advisor, you can say that if you can help them quantify, a certain percentage, like let's say, in this particular investment product, 10% or 20% seems to be has some interest-based component. You can advise them to purify, their earnings. So what we discussed in that class, and we went through a simple calculation, is that if you can quantify 20%, then you purify your income of 20% by giving away to charity. Okay, so like broad forms of charity. And then there were some other people said that, or they met some other Islamic scholars and they advised them to just give zakat, and that would help them purify their earnings. So for me, this one is it really depends on you, right? If you are very particular about purifying, you would try to find out as accurately as possible how much is earned not pure, and then you purify according to that amount. If you feel like 2.5% standard for like a zakat harta, that's also up to you, because ultimately I'm not judged, right? Only Allah sits there high. No ustaz, no mufti can judge you, right? Allah is between you and Allah. The questions will be posed to you, not to your mufti, not to your anyone else in the grave. You answer it, and you do it to the best of your conscience. Right? The options that I'm giving you is in accordance to the unpure portion you purify or you give away, and then the rest is up to you. If you are a very a person of very strong belief and strong position, you feel like any form of unpure component is haram, then my advice to you is stay away from such investments. It is totally your call. It is your decision, right? I'm teaching you the rules, not to impose rules on you. I'm teaching you the rules as I understand it, so that you can understand it and you can use it in your own context. This is the reason why we design this course, is to equip you with the tools so that you can make educated decisions on your own, to decide for yourself and your family and the people that depend on you. So this was the way we answered in the class. Okay.
Okay, so
your responsibility as a financial advisor is to advise them about, investors are investors, right? Whether you're Islamic or non-Islamic, they always want a higher return on their investment. They want the money to work for them, because they have a full-time job and they don't have the capacity, to be like a fund manager or the skill set or the familiarity of financial markets to make very profitable decisions. So they hire financial advisors to recommend them the best products. So your job as a financial advisor to recommend them the best products. If the best products within the cyclicality of the market, right? Because sometimes commodity are good. Now bond markets look better, right? Because we're going into a recession. So you stay away from equities, right? So these are kind of advice that you should be giving from a financial advisor standpoint. And then also about the, rightly so, like we have done, Saif, the halal and how much of the haram part and the halal part. So your responsibility stops there as a financial advisor. The decision depends on your customer, but as long as you have given them all the information that they need to make the decision, you can't make the decision for them. The decision is up for them to make, because your responsibility stops at financial advisory.
okay, I think let me share the offer that we have for our current attendees, and as well as the registrants. So the full course will be held on 2 Saturdays, 20th and 27th of August, 10 AM to 5 PM at Madrasah Al-Junid. So there'll be a mixture of Madrasah Asatizahs as well as the public. So don't worry, we can just mingle around and discuss together as well. And exclusive for those who have registered for this primer, you are eligible for a $20 discount. The original price is around $320. Simply make your registration the link in the chat function, and we will settle it from there. So if you have any further questions, you can post it here or unmute yourself. If not, Dr. Hazik, you have anything for that?
No, I just hope that you know, if you're thinking about signing up the course and you have questions, it's maybe, you know, if you have questions now, I can answer it directly. But if you have like you know, some ringing questions when you're sitting with your friends, teh tarik, you know, Saturday night and Sunday night, and when you're taking a break and you have some questions among yourselves and you wanted to ask, you can you know, if you're planning to sign up for the class, you come to the class and you can ask any question. And you know, if I'm able to answer it, I will answer it. So far, all questions I'm able to answer, so it would be quite fruitful. I think even asatizas or you know, would-be asatizas in the madrasa, they are coming for the course, or you know, we're speaking to their principal and VPs to possibly include it in the curriculum, is because they understand there's a huge gap even for them that we can fill through the education, formal education of Islamic finance. So it's meant to help us deal with the day-to-day, but still, you know, ultimately is to get closer, to be a better Muslim, to get closer to our religion, to fully understanding the beauty of our religion. Because if the religion or the principles of the religion are not used to solve simple day problems, right, then it wouldn't be very useful. Right? Allah says that it's sent as a mercy to mankind, means it's meant as a broad framework of solutions for us, for our time in this world. Right? The world is created imperfect. There will be people that will annoy you. There will be systems which are imperfect. There will be bosses that are unreasonable. There will be employees that are unreasonable under your charge. So how do we treat them? How do we overcome these issues? How do we so this is what we have done in Islamic finance. So in the scope of finance, we have extracted everything from or everything that we could extract from the Quran and the Sunnah, based on hadiths and the actions of the reported actions of the Prophet ﷺ, and then we apply it within the finance context, within economic context, so that we adhere and we keep ourselves safe by not transgressing the boundaries that has been placed upon us knowingly or unknowingly. Whether you know there are rules, whether you're supposed to follow or not, it doesn't absolve you of the responsibility to adhere to them. So that's the rule of law, right? So we have to understand this, and then through the course we'll go through different set of tools, which maybe the participants will take as advice that you can manifest in yourself and take it with you in the work that you do. Whether you're a financial advisory or you're an engineer or you're a business owner or a banker or whatever. So it's meant to help you become a better person in the broad sense. So earlier today at 4:30 there was a conference that was organized by a Nigerian Islamic Finance group, which are my cohort when we were doing PhD, and they invited our mentor, my mentor and her mentor as well, because we did our PhD under him. And the topic was how Islamic finance could help Sri Lanka. So everybody knows about what's happening in Sri Lanka and all that. So it was a very very quick session. My mentor only spoke for half an hour, but within that half an hour, every time he speaks, it's like finding buried treasure. Right? Diamonds and pearls just seem to come out of his mouth, because he worked in the IIMM for 24 years. He advised 7 countries that were under his charge. So these things are familiar to him. So he walked through some ideas about Sri Lanka, which was truly eye-opening, because in the media we think that Sri Lanka is bankrupt, wealth has been eroded and blah blah blah, and he just came and he said, oh, actually, if you look at the wealth of Sri Lanka is 400 billion, they only owe 55 billion. That's 13% of their wealth. So if you're running a corporation and you only owe 13%, that means you're actually a very strong corporation. So the problem in Sri Lanka is liquidity, not insolvency. So these are the type of insights that you would probably get when you have a formal type of course that is being taught to you. You understand the difference between liquidity problem, insolvency problem, cash flow issue versus revenue or income or asset value, asset valuation issue. So the thing about Islamic finance is you look at the two terms, right? There's Islamic term and then there's a finance term, right? For most of us, we are, especially Muslims, right? We are sort of like stuck at the Islamic portion, but we fail to see the finance portion, where in Islamic finance, and I see this time and time again, right? You have to understand finance and economics, whether it's conventional or Islamic. You have to understand, because the fundamentals of economics and the fundamentals of finance are the same, right? Profit and loss, making money, agreements, contracts, and stuff like that. So once you understand like liquidity management, what are the risks, default risk, credit risk, aging risk, and then for Islamic finance, Shariah compliance risk. So once we understand all of that, it gives you a strong foundation for you to make decisions on top of it, right? So if you're a non-financial person, it's like coming to a financial course, and on top of that, you learn the Islamic view on finance. So you get almost like two courses in one, right? Because if you're a non-finance person, you have to go to a finance course to learn finance. Then you go to Islamic finance course to learn the Islamic view on finance. But if you come to this course, it's like having two courses in one, because we'll explain the financial system and the financial portion, and then the Islamic view on things. So I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal. I'm just saying the benefits of coming to such a course, because we design it to give you full benefit, right? And we are charging a price which I think is reasonable for the price to continue to go on, because my time is also precious and limited. So I want to make it worth my time to actually design and run this course, and not so expensive that it will be a barrier for people to attend. Because if like Brother Ridwan has attended some of my other courses before, and if you compare it to other courses, a 2-day course like this would cost maybe 800 to in excess of 1,000. But we're only charging how much, Brother Ridwan?
300 only for registrants of this primer.
Yeah. So we try to balance both, because like all of you, I am also trying to balance by imparting what I have learned. It's my responsibility as a Islamic finance scholar to impart what I've learned, and also to make a living so that I can feed my own family. If not, my wife will start screaming at me and say, why you are not earning, and there may be problems for myself. So we like all of you, I'm also trying to balance and to find out the best, most optimized way we can do this.
So just to take note, this ARSCP points is only for Madrasah Satizas. So the 6 madrasas, they are eligible for the 7 CP points. But besides that, this is also AOFI, CPD hours accredited. So if you are an AOFI fellow, you also get their points